Microphone on. Hello. Welcome. A little bonus stream this week because I didn't get through all the games yesterday that were sent in from the Patreon community, and all four of the games that we're going to look at in this stream are ones we've seen before that are now a little bit further into development, and I'm excited to see them all. They're all games that I enjoyed when I looked at them before. We have WOIM, which used to be called If I Was a Worm. This is a fun little soccer band with worm. We've got Well You Can't Stay Here, which is a sort of slightly board gamey, worker placement-y type survival game with an interesting sort of thematic premise. King's Haven, where we're doing the same sort of party house, push your luck, card drawing type deck buildery game that we've seen a few times recently. I really like this kind of implementation of that idea. And Goreticulture, which is a game about growing plants or flowers in the gory remains of a kind of Quake level or some sort of kind of 90s shooter level. You're kind of tidying up the carnage from the level by using it to grow plants, which is wonderfully bizarre, and I like it very much. We're going to check out Why You Can't Stay Here first, I think, just because that's in the browser, while I just make sure everything else is downloaded properly. Morning, folks in the chat. I've actually got the multi-stream on so I can see Twitch today. Yesterday it defaulted to the YouTube one, and I couldn't see Twitch for ages, so sorry about that. Let me know if there are any audio issues. I'm still constantly rebuilding everything around me. New desk over here, because I was running out of space. My to-do list was constantly in front of me on top of my keyboard because I didn't have enough desk space. So keep rebuilding stuff, moving things around. Let's check out While You Can't Stay Here. So we're going to choose our starting characters, which will be Theo and Barry. Theo is a scholar, Barry is a scout. I like the fact that even just from the heads, we get a little bit of kind of like social information that lets us know that this is like a rugged guy, and this is a older chap that's a little bit scared, and that immediately helps us understand kind of their role and their skills and their strengths and weaknesses. So Theo can advise a character to help them with the thing that they're doing. They can counsel a character to revive them. Let me just see what's going on with weird echoey sounds. Oh dear. Oh yeah, hang on. I see what's happening. It just won't behave itself. There we go. There, we're on the proper mic now. Every time there's something. Yeah, we weren't on the proper mic. I'm going mad. I wish I didn't have to deal with any of this stuff. Okay, let's just kind of start with the tutorial and see how far we get. Give me a random uncommon relic. Hiking boots. Move to the tile containing a path. Paths help us find a way out of the level. Let's find one. Okay, is that a path? That isn't very clear, but let's do it.
Yeah, sorry about the scheduling thing. This was on the YouTube page for yesterday. Just getting swamped at the moment. Keep getting things like that wrong. To use the path, we need to explore this area. Enter the tile here. Okay. So there's kind of like a... Okay. I think these dice mechanics are different from what I saw previously. So they show up, we do a pre-dice roll, so we know who's going to be strong at stuff. That's interesting. So I can click on one of these guys, place the characters at the site, then end the day. Okay. So they're going over there, they're going to work on clearing this route. And as they do, you get your kindling for your fire as well. So I think the dice mechanic is new since I played it last. We've got like a pre-roll, so you know how strong they're going to be at whatever you ask them to do. And then in there they have abilities they can do as well, which I think feel a little bit hidden, like it could be quite easy to forget that these exist. Although I don't know how active the use of them is supposed to be. Place the character with the highest dice on the site. Right, and he heals some morale because he's not doing anything, he's just chilling by the fire. Okay, so that's where we are. And the exit is over to the left twice and down once. There was a weird, confusing audio loop going on there. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I'm gonna make him 1 point braver. Oh, that was strange. There's some strange kind of game flow sequencing stuff going on here. Leave the characters at the campfire and click End Day. We can move on from here. Okay, so these are like 4 different areas they can search, and you can place the characters down to do different things, and they will search, and they'll also like gain resources as they do that. So there's kind of like multiple outputs for the little actions they do, and then this pre-rolled dice. How do I exit the campsite? It's not super clear how we actually exit the campsite. Oh, map. Okay, exit there. Yes. Okay, now we're going to go over to this forest and then the exit's there. That's the exit, that portal. I think some of these map icons need a little bit more visual differentiation, because if this is supposed to be a path, I think this is supposed to be a path that's an icon that's a path. These stand out okay because they've got like a different color outline. This portal doesn't stand out very well, and I know from playing it before that that's kind of the end of the level. So I would try and make sure that the stuff that's more background information is a bit more backgroundy, and the stuff that's supposed to be important sticks out. Ridaj, I don't really have opinions on game ideas until you've started executing the idea. Whether or not a game idea is a good idea depends on how able you are to execute that idea. So I don't really have baseline opinions on game ideas from people I don't know, because the thing that makes it a good idea or not is not inherent to the idea. It's to do with like what you're able to execute well as a developer. Well, this one is crumbling quicker. Oh, Theo passed his courage test, but the big strong Barry didn't. Okay. This is a great little radial the little morale meter, the way it kind of turns into a more disheveled looking face is fun. Maybe give those dice roll if the dice are sort of, you know, built in such a way that I need to just put them both on here now. If the dice are built in such a way that 6 is always good and 1 is always bad, I would put like a sort of result noise on them as well, like a ping, and then make it sound a bit more buzzery if it's a low number and stuff like that. Okay, right, we've got a ruined tower, skill test knowledge, difficulty normal. Right, so they've both got quite high knowledge, but I'm going to send Theo in and Barry can stay here and recover some morale. We're going to take the basket, chance to find food when uncovering a site. Okay. Now, I don't know if that's basically the game teaching me that every tower will have a relic in, and that's what towers are for. Not sure. We should get out of this level. Okay. Maybe we should call them tiles rather than levels. I think calling them tiles is a bit confusing. There we go. Look at their little button on their map. That's cute. Okay. Yeah, this is called a camp here, and it's called a level here. Try and be a bit more consistent with the naming, because there's some really interesting things with this game. It's relatively easy to understand, even though there's quite a lot of strange concepts here, and I think it is because it's so board gamey. Oh, hi, I'm glad to see some survivors. I'm Beryl. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure where we are, but we should find out. Tell you what, you keep looking for a way out of here and any survivors. I will try to meet up with you again soon. I like how the decisions feel quite kind of chunky, but they're quite simple, right? It's like at the start, it's like, okay, I'm generally going to spread my guys out and get them to start revealing 2 spaces, because the quicker I see what's behind them, the quicker I can make a choice about which one to like focus on. I should give one of them a rest, maybe. This guy, okay, they both lost morale now, so maybe, right, he's got a high score now, so I'm gonna put him here and then leave Barry resting, and then I'll swap them the next day and let Theo rest. Okay, there's something behind there. That's the portal. That's the portal behind there. But yeah, the resource management of their morale versus like I think the dice mechanic that's been added since I last played it is really smart, because that leads to some situations. So here it's a no-brainer, right? Where Theo has rolled a 1, so he's not going to be very good at whatever I set him to do. And he needs to rest, so I may as well just let him rest and send Barry over there. But sometimes you're going to get a high dice roll on someone that has low morale, which creates a situation where you want to endanger them because you don't want to waste their skill roll, right? And this is one of the benefits of doing those kind of like pre-luck dice rolls, where you know what the outcome of the dice is before you make a decision using it, because it kind of creates those kind of interesting decisions. Whereas just like rolling the dice to find out what happens after you decided what to do is just like very pure randomness. We had this discussion a few weeks ago about input randomness versus output randomness, and I think the dice, the way that they're implemented here, is a very good fit for the game. Okay, they're both only down 1 morale, so we're going to put them both on there and hopefully get a bit closer to uncovering the portal. Yes, done it. Right, yeah, level is the whole map. That makes sense. Okay. What do we do? Do we do exit or... Step through. There we go, and then we're on the next world. Plane. I think plane is quite good, actually. Yeah, I think these should be either called tiles or hexes. And the whole thing should be a plane. Because that really gets into this kind of interdimensional weird thing that's going on. It really reminds me of Toe Jam and Earl levels. Right, so this looks like there's 2 ruins there. And there's 2 ruins over there. And the one that I've started in only has 1 ruin. So I'm gonna... This has a ruin, a cave, and something else. So you can sort of see, I think, roughly what's going to be on the area that you're on before you go there. But you still have to like work out which one it's behind. Yeah, I mean, every time someone calls something in a video game a shard, my infantile brain just starts calling it a shard. So I never think shard is good. And as for like the tiles, they're hexes or they're tiles, and that's like the board gamey name for them. So I would just go with the easy option there. Right. Let's give Barry a strength. Trying to make sure they spec into skills that they don't currently have. Right, so they've both rolled a 5, so I should keep trying to uncover that with them. And I only let them rest when they get a low roll, probably. Come on, my brave boys. Go and uncover that tower. Ah, yeah. So Barry already passed the test, so we didn't need to take another turn to... Remove 1 site cover on camp arrival. Oh, that's good. Let's do that. So the next time we go to one of these camp things, one of these will just be open. That's a massive upgrade. Okay, how are you doing for morale? Right, Theo is rolled low, so Barry, you can go and do some stuff on your own for a bit. I think the numbering of the morale is quite confusing because the radial disc here treats it as if it's quarters, but that just said +2 and it only went up 1 quarter. Okay, over there. Is there a path there? Is that going to help us with scouting? Barry can carry on resting. Look at Barry's little smile. Looks so smug. Oh, it's a cave, I think. I like the fact that the more you play the game, the more you're going to be able to sort of identify what these specific back panels look like. That's neat. Not sure I like the look of that. Okay, we need a good knowledge roll. So if next time Theo rolls high, Theo's going in the cave. I'm sorry, Theo. I know you don't like the look of that, but you're just very knowledgeable. And apparently you're an expert on caves. Might just send you in with the +2 because... Oh no, he failed. His knowledge has gone down to 2. It's been eaten up. How did that happen? Ah, it's gone back up again now. Is this being added on and that's why these numbers are changing? Is that a thing that's happening? Oh, we've upgraded our... Uh-oh. So the campfire now has an upgrade that makes it increase morale more quickly, I think, because we found cooking gear in the tent. That's really neat. That kind of does multiple things there. Having the cooking gear in the tent is like, okay, we've got a sort of static upgrade for our campfire that makes it better, right? Which is something that could be introduced in a game by like spending resources or something, but having you find it kind of gives a purpose for like going and looking in a cave. But it also kind of creates a bit of story intrigue because it means that someone else was in that cave before. And that's like a bit of story that you get by doing a gameplay thing, not by it like being a separate piece of story. That's cool. Okay. Reveal one tile on map load. Cross deserts without camping to avoid collapse. So on map load, does that mean when we first go onto the map? Okay, we are going to level up Barry and then we're going to leave. Barry, we're going to make you slightly more courageous. Oh, have we got another point? Back to the map. So we went up here, and if we go up here, there's a path. Right, so the paths are the map points that help us find the exit of the current level or plane we're on. And those look like... Oh, I can't scroll. Can I scroll? Oh yeah, WASD. It said there's a path here. I can't see it as one of these little things on the map. Okay, so we can see behind this one already, so we don't need to work on that one at all. There's something there. I'm not sure what. I'm not oh, the skills are just for the challenges, I think. I don't think they have any impact on the other stuff in the game. Hard to tell. You're not looking great, guys. Right, let's send Barry over here and you can have a rest, and then hopefully Barry can have a rest tomorrow. Pepper, too much of a pain. The more of those things that require manual input from my end, the more likely there are things to go wrong. I mean, you've already seen like how hard it is to keep the schedule correct for streams and stuff. If I have to put the name of the game on screen, it's just going to be something that's constantly getting open to human error. And when we don't have a producer or someone else somehow running this thing, which I know bigger streamers do have, I don't know how they do it, then stuff like that just increases the chance of error on things. But the that always goes onto the VOD after the stream anyway. So if people need links to the games, if they're open playtests, then people can get them that way. Okay, I'm just gonna let you rest. Oof. Oh, the morale is going down quicker because we're on a collapsing thing. So okay, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. Oof. I don't want to be in a desert on a collapsing world. Right, just have a rest first. Are they not gonna, they're not gonna get a rest because they've got no firewood? Is that a thing that's happening right now? Okay. Rest. There we go. Okay. Whew. That was quite tense, getting them up from like the low morale. There's lots of little moments here that need sound effects. And I would say, as a general piece of advice for anyone watching, try to go through your game and work out the points for sound effects based on emotional moments for the player, because there are some here where it's like a very clear physical thing happening, like the dice rolling or the trees shaking, that are very obvious points for sound effects, and I think that's why you've put them there. But there are also sort of interface moments, like the morale going up after they rest. Those are moments where you should have more of like an abstract positive sign, or like maybe a sigh, like the character goes ah, and then you could just have like a pitch for that sound effect for each character. So if you've got like a character that's supposed to have a higher voice, you just increase the pitch of that ah sound, something like that, so that when the moments in the game that are supposed to have like some kind of emotional association with them, like relief or frustration, all of those things, they're where the like highest priority places for sound effects in the game. I think it's very easy to fall into the habit of just thinking about sounds the game world is making rather than sounds that enhance what the player is doing and thinking about with the interface and like their kind of emotional stakes in the game and all of that kind of stuff. Like, try and map your sound effects onto how the player is supposed to feel at particular moments. Have some food. Gonna get your morale all the way back up this time? Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that was nice. But we can't stay here. He said it. He said the name of the game. Gonna give this one about 5 more minutes. I'm trying to make sure each of the games gets half an hour today. I've got hard out at 12 o'clock. I've got to go to the tip because I have so many boxes in my house. There looks like there's something here, but it also looks like the portal is not up in this corner at all. So rather than try and camp at every place we go to, we're going to keep moving. But there are 2 things over here. I don't know what this little lake is. That looks like it might be significant. I find this whole project, I find kind of fascinating, because I used to make board games. I haven't worked on a board game in a long time. And that means that I'm quite interested in video games that do things with board game mechanics. And this feels like a really cool middle ground between something that is based on board gamey type interaction metaphors, but has some stuff in that only works in a video game, like this peek through the holes mechanic and stuff like that. It's really cool. I think there's lots of little things to iron out. The core of the game is good. I really like the theme as well, because it's giving Lost. It's giving like that kind of thing. Like it's a sort of real survival situation with a slightly surreal thing going on underneath it. It's human-centered. We got these characters that you can read a lot into as a player, but they don't actually have any dialogue. I'm a big fan of that. I kind of like character story in games where the characters are just there and then you have to read into their relationships. I know that's not for everyone, but like when I play a game like Darkest Dungeon, I have all that going on in my head. Just looking at the characters and sort of imagining their relationships is enough for me. And yeah, there's just a lot of cool stuff here. And although there's a lot of strange concepts in this game, I don't find it overwhelming to learn. And I think the closest reference point I have for a successful indie game that is similar to this would be something like Curious Expedition. And Curious Expedition, I did feel was overloaded with stuff and was very, very difficult to learn. And I think this is just like feels like a more streamlined version of Curious Expedition if you've ever played that. It also reminds me a little bit of a game called Gods Will Be Watching that was a little bit more story driven, but it had this same kind of like dealing with a perilous situation and like very nice kind of character focused pixel art type stuff. I'm gonna I really want to finish that trial before we actually leave this tile, otherwise we're gonna have come here for nothing. But maybe that's how the game's gonna get me. Trick-taking card games, I mean, it depends, doesn't it? Do trick-taking games work against a computer? Because most of the card game formats that we've seen grow popular in the last few years on video games, they work because they're asymmetrical and you're playing against like a thing that isn't meant to represent another player, right? Like in Balatro, you're not playing against another hand of cards, and in Slay the Spire, you're not playing against another hand of cards. And some of that's a production consideration, right? So if with Slay the Spire, the game, if you imagine that as a totally different game. So for example, Hearthstone had a game mode called Dungeon Run that they discontinued, which really annoyed me because it was my favorite mode. But Dungeon Run was like a roguelike mode where you started off with a small deck and you added cards to it after each match, but they were matches against another player. And they had like a version where you were playing against the CPU as well, and they could do all of that because they already had a multiplayer game and they had a framework for playing that multiplayer game against a bot and so on. Most of the indie card games, you're actually using your hand of cards against something that is not a player with another hand of cards, and it's not even it's not even a CPU character that's supposed to represent a player. So I'm sure there is such a thing as a single player trick-taking card game, but the time I've spent in tabletop games playing games has tended to be with heavy Euros or occasionally big Eurotrash type games like the ones that Fantasy Flight makes. So I don't actually have like loads of knowledge of smaller trick-taking games. I guess things like Love Letter and stuff like that. And I'm sure there are single player trick-taking games out there that you could model a video game on, and I think it's probably just a case of like finding what the non-digital versions of those are and then bringing them over to digital and like retheming them and working out like, okay, what can we do in the computer version of this that we couldn't do in the card-based version of this. Yeah, Andrew, they stopped Dungeon Run. And I think the only reason I can think of that they did it is because it didn't encourage monetization, because it doesn't use the cards that you've bought, and that sucks. And I think it's one of the worst things that that team did with that game, and it probably wasn't because of the game designers. It was probably because of the finance department. Okay, that's a courage test. You're going to get one shot at this, Barry, and then we're leaving. You can drop them in the cracks. Really? Game over. Maybe don't drop people down the cracks. That's so funny. I just want to show you the game references we were talking about before we move on to the next one. I really, really like this game. I think you really want to sort of juice the emotional moments in the gameplay. It's especially the ones that are like a little bit abstract and a little bit more kind of heavy on the interface and the dice rolling and like stats going up and down and stuff like that. Make sure that the sound design and any like VFX you add to the game are like really enhancing how the player is supposed to feel about that moment. I'm finding that increasingly important the more games I play on this channel. What we've got, of course, we'll be watching, and what was the other game? You know, I found I was talking about this a couple of times recently, where it's like sometimes a game teaches you intellectually how to play it, but it doesn't really emotionally reinforce the good and bad things in the game enough, and that's very obvious when it's like game feedy stuff like shooting a gun or getting hit in a combat game. But in something like that, I think it's even more important to make sure that the kind of feedback in terms of sound effects and VFX are very clearly indicating when something is like a positive or negative thing. Because even if the player kind of understands what's happening in the game, that kind of more subliminal emotional impact of those things is going to really amp up how they feel about it, and that's the thing that will pull them through the game and like make them want to play it, right? Like if you imagine your experience of failing in a game but still wanting to continue to play, what was it that did that? And often in a lot of games, when they've got all that polish in, that makes failure feel a bit more deliberately frustrating and painful. You know, your screen shake, your red vignette when you get hurt, you're like when you do something wrong. All of that side of the game, that kind of like feel and juice stuff to do with making failure feel deliberately punishing, is often that kind of thing where it feels like the game is taunting you, and then when you fail, you want to retry it. When you don't have all that stuff, it's like the player sort of cognitively understands why they failed the game, but they don't have that like emotional, oh, I need to go and try again type thing. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because those are often things we think about as like late polish in a project. But I think thinking about how you're going to make your player feel good about the things they're supposed to do and their little successes and stuff like that, and how you're going to make them feel bad about their mistakes, I think that's worth experimenting with much earlier on, because those things are like very fundamental to having people understand your game at a more like tactile gut level, rather than just like reading the rules and then going, yeah, I kind of understand what I'm doing here. You know, failure in games teaches us stuff, and failure that feels like a real slap on the wrist teaches us that stuff in a more intense way that also encourages us to retry the game. And I think that stuff is really important. But yeah, that last game we looked at is called Well, You Can't Stay Here. I'll just get it back up again. Yeah, Well, You Can't Stay Here. I think that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. It reminds me a little bit of Gods Will Be Watching, which is this kind of scenario based. This is about 10 years old now, this indie game, kind of scenario based sci-fi game where there are these different vignettes playing out, and it's in real time, and it's basically like a point and click adventure, but instead of having free roam around the world, you just have these single high intensity story scenes that are like little dioramas where you choose to do certain things, and there's usually only about like 5 to 10 actions you can do in a scene, but if you don't time them right, then everything goes wrong. It kind of feels a little bit similar to that. Curious Expedition, which is this kind of strategy roguelike about exploring a big strange continent. And then there's a few different video games that are based on worker placement board games that I feel are in a similar vein. This is The Police is a similar sort of thing. Through the Darkest of Times is a similar sort of thing, where you are playing as a kind of resistance group in Nazi Germany. And I find this whole design space really, really interesting. As someone that likes board games, like finding out what people can do with those kind of mechanics and like where the line is, because you often can't just like directly translate a board game into a video game in a way that feels good and interesting. Like certain things don't feel good, you know, rolling a die as a post luck thing and then like the quote unquote excitement of seeing what you get is not as exciting in a video game because you don't have the physical pieces. So there's all of those kind of considerations, and I just find it a really, really interesting design space. And it's like a lot of those games they kind of like Curious Expedition, for example, is a game that I admire. I wouldn't necessarily say I enjoy it. So I'm always interested to see what people do in this design space because I want to see people do it well. And I don't know if I've seen the one yet where I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And I think the thing I like about what we just played, Well, You Can't Start Here, is it's streamlined down to the point where it's just so easy to grasp and it's not overwhelming. And that means that you can have all of the cool stuff come from like the variations of the relics and the places you visit, because the player's actions are actually very, very simple. And I think that's like a really nice way to build an elegant game, is to keep the actual actions that the player can do incredibly simple, have different context where the ramifications of those, you know, cascade or have lots of different interesting variations. And the setup you've got in Well, You Can't Stay Here, the setup you've got there is that you could keep adding content to that bucket of like the types of tiles, the biomes, the characters and their different stats, the relics that you collect, the things that are behind the screens that you can uncover, and the different things that happen when you go into them. You can add all of the variety there, and because the player's actions are just like picking up the characters and choosing which thing to put them on. I'm getting pulled into the void. Sorry. I can't see my end. There's no like ping or anything on Streamlabs. I cannot see. But yeah, because the player actions are so simple in that game, you can just keep adding variety in other parts of the game, and it doesn't make the starting experience any more complex. And I find that really, really interesting. And the problem I had with Curious Expedition is that it just felt like the baseline of the game was way, way more complex. Let's replay Goreticulture. So, the hallway of help. We've got a lot more helper stuff in this game now. We've got a little manual. This has come on so far since I last saw it. You've done so much stuff. I'm going to turn the sensitivity up a little bit. There we go. We've got a mop to clean up blood. It launches sponges with force, hits sponges or grown ivy with mop to add more. We've got a bucket, we've got seeds, water plants with bloody water. Some grow on splatter, others on chunks. We've got different types of plants. So if you're sensitive to this kind of stuff, we're going to have some gore here. It is very silly cartoon gore though. So we've got a wild rot bloom that grows on chunks and is used to drain chunks. So the blood will come out of the chunk of gore and into the plant. We've got the spitting pitcher. Feed sponges to refill. Splashes cleaning area, can refill buckets. So this is kind of stuff that was all in... I think they've been working on this game for about a year now. I don't know if it started in Collab Jam. Can't remember. But a lot of this stuff, these plants and how they work, were in the original game. But they were never sort of explained in a way that you could access. I kind of like the way that this is laid out as a little manual. It's kind of cool. We can customize our gloves. Very nice. Very, very nice. Jump. Change item. Tab is the book. Crouch. Control. Add sponge to mop. Launch sponge. Do I have a mop? Oh, there. So the mop has two functions. We can mop up blood with it as a sort of a melee weapon, if you will. We've got bloody footprints as well. We can also pick up sponges and then launch them. So if I pick up this bloody sponge, it's really funny because it's like you've got the aesthetics of a Quake map, right? It's kind of playing on this sort of pastiche of an OG 90s 3D Realms boomer shooter type thing. But the kind of set of interactions you've built are more like ImSim type stuff. Refill bucket. Okay, we'll equip the bucket, and then I've got the bucket and the thing, the mop. I can refill my bucket. Love the fact that it's just kind of, we can visually see. We can see the fullness of the bucket. There's no like extra interface for that because it's just visible on the thing itself. Pour blood on growing plants. Da, 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 da. Oh, that's not a plant. That's just a demon. So, can I plant some rot blooms in here? Ah, yes, beautiful. This is a really good example of a sort of it's kind of a tech gimmick, right? Like, getting this to happen probably required some like very specific kinds of learning to like make these plants appear on a particular plane of that model and grow out of it. You know, I don't know much about 3D. I don't do 3D game dev, but that's such a good example of like a really high value art tech gimmick, you know, because it just adds so much in terms of like what you actually see and experience as a player, and it's just really charming. I really like that. Trim plants with shears. Some are rare. Sell plants in the bin. Okay, so we basically got a looks like we've got a goal, which I don't know if the game really had last time I played it, if I'm totally honest. How do I pick these up? I'm just completely destroying the plants, I think. I don't know how I... Ah, there we go. Not always clear we need a tooltip for that. One of the things is you've got so many tooltips for like picking stuff up and everything, and that's fine, and that's good, and that's fine. But it does mean that when you're missing one, it so when I've got my hands free, I can pick these up. But there's not a tooltip for that. Oh no, there is there. Hold. Okay. I seem to have to drop what's in my hand to be able to pick up a thing. I don't know how I just like put away what's in... Is there a button to just put away what's in your hand? Because I'm having to... E? Maybe it's E? Because I have to drop an item to pick anything up. But these aren't inventory items, these are just like hand items. So I think there's a little bit of a kind of confusing sort of gap between the stuff you can have as an inventory item and the stuff you can just carry around in a sort of Half-Life physics engine-y way. And basically I have to drop one of these items to make my hands empty to then be able to left-click interact with the other stuff in the world, which doesn't feel great. It's a little bit unintuitive and it's hard to learn, and it might be hard to remember as well. Creeping sponge, a plant that creates spongy fruit. Try it, grow your own. Don't mind if I do. So we're going to get rid of one of these buckets. Oh, I see. Okay, if I go to the empty inventory slots, then my hands are empty. That makes sense. Okay. So there's 5 inventory slots. There's only ever 5 inventory slots, and you need to just kind of make use of that. That, it makes a little bit more sense. Grows on blood splatter, clears a nearby blood. Okay. So that's just going to soak up all that blood. Sponging's hard. Why is sponging so hard? Right, how do we grow these? Ivy grows on blood splatter. Pluck sponges for the mop. Sponges spatter. Oh, okay, the mop. I think the mop basically doesn't do anything without a sponge. Is that why it doesn't have like a... So the sponges are the soft component of the mop. There isn't like an absorbent mop component without sponges on. So it's kind of like it's a melee weapon with ammo, and the sponges are the ammo kind of thing. That makes sense. A little bit of a learning curve, but I like how it works. Okay, so that's how we do that. I love surrealism in games generally, but what I really like about this is you're using the kind of pastiche of the 90s games that this looks like to enable a particular type of surrealism that makes it a little bit more accessible, and then you're letting the surrealism be like, hey, we can do all of this weird stuff, and the game has its internal cartoon logic. And when you sort of understand that what this game is about is like cleaning stuff up, growing and selling plants, and the sort of like slapstick ultra violence of Quake and Doom and stuff like that, it just feels like those are the 3 sort of pillars of the game, right? You've got your design pillars are the cleaning, the plant, the sort of horticulture, right? The cleaning and the horticulture, the Goreticulture, it's in the name of the game, and this kind of like goofy slapstick pastiche of these older games. And everything in the game is built around connecting those 3 things. Those 3 things are just so tightly knitted together, and we're not even outside of the tutorial yet, but I just, you know, I always really liked the idea of this game for that, and I think seeing it develop into something that has this kind of proper teaching area and everything is fantastic. I think one of the things you could do with this area as well eventually, I think this is fine, like having the text on the wall, but doing a little bit of graphic design so that this feels a bit like a kind of sign you know, like a corporate training sign that you'd get in like a back room of a Stanley Parable level or something like that. Could be a neat little addition. So rot blooms slowly drain chunks of blood, sometimes spreads when blooming, flowers give seeds. So a nutrient draining plant. So the rot blooms are the only ones that go on the chunks, I think. So what they do is they kind of take the chunk they grow on and they transfer the blood outside of it. I think that's what it means by this. Slowly drains chunks of blood, sometimes spreads when blooming, flowers give seeds. I mean, I like ecosystem games generally. You know, the game I'm working on, it's a platformer, but it has a lot of these kind of sim type qualities of being a sort of ecosystem, both of like alive things in the real sense of an ecosystem and like just kind of in a sort of video gamey, trying to create loads of emergent gameplay through things that interact together in fun ways type game. So like this kind of thing is just so far up my street, because you can kind of just come up with all these interactions and just try and maximize how much all of these different objects and verbs work together as you develop the game, you know. And you can look at this game and this set of tools and objects and verbs and everything, and probably come up with new stuff that doesn't require a new game object. It doesn't require a new mechanic. It just requires like an existing mechanic to work on an existing game object in a new and interesting way. And you can get so much mileage out of just kind of building the game that way. Grow plants to maintain your tools. Earn coins by cleaning levels. Customize your gloves in the book. Try the exam. Hallway of help. Okay, is this? It said try the exam, but I've okay. Don't need 2 buckets. I need to leave the hallway of help now. Try the exam. The try the exam is not working for me. There is no exam to try. Okay. Is there a way I can... So we went into the hallway of help, and I don't think it would let me back out, which is kind of... I love the way this mop is designed. That is like exactly how you would expect. If you go through a Quake Arena level and you kill everyone, and then the level shuts down, and these little goblins come in and clean the level, that's exactly what I would expect the technology to look like. Feed us sponges. Feed you some sponges. See, so again, like, game objects with just multiple interactions and uses. Fed them sponges. They've cleaned the sponges, or they've filled up with water. Interesting. So if I equip this, huh? This is like a seed pod shop. Right, let's get kitted out. Me bucket. Okay, so I'm actually supposed to clean this room now, is that right? Oh, that was the actual quit the level. Okay. Kinda with some things, magic quit the game thing, it would have to say quit the game. I thought I was just exiting that. And okay, we need 250 coins to open that door. I pressed D and I got stuck. Oh. Hello. Hello, friend. This is what our character looks like, by the way. These are the actual character models. They're like, they're minions. Not you. I will say the games that really inspire me to want to learn 3D and a 3D engine and workflow do tend to be sillier ones like this that really make use of kind of physics and stuff, have a very good reason for being 3D. Okay, maybe it's time to try and sell some stuff. So if I put sponges in there, will they sell? Are they not worth anything? The sponges aren't worth anything because they're the fruit. But if I pick this up and put it in there, is that worth coins? Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. Why are you still alive? Why are you following me? Why are you following me? Don't do that. Don't like it. Stop. Don't like this guy. Get out of here. Go away. I'm selling you. Can't believe you're still here. You stay in there. The bin needs to just be a bit deeper. It needs to like go into the ground. The head won't let me sell it, which is a shame. Ah, hang on. Hang on. That takes the blood out of things. Our pitcher plants grow on blood, so... Why is it not equipped? Ah, because I need to equip it, not pick it up. Mate, you are a pain. Go away. Right. It will take me a while to really learn all the interactions. I've been taught them by the tutorial, but they're so strange. And that's good. That's good. I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay, so we go and get some sponges from here. Don't go in there. Satisfying little boink when you... Where did they go? Right, we're gonna have to move on in a minute. This is a very pleasing game to interact with. I feel quite. I would say I feel quite overwhelmed, and I think there's just too much. It's like you've built a tutorial now, which is a good tutorial in terms of the fact that it's very full. But I think if I were going to learn this, if I was going to like really learn this game to like invest a lot of time in playing it, I think throwing us in the deep end with everything is not going to be the way to make this kind of accessible to people. I find it really, really just joyfully weird, and every interaction in it already is just really, really fun and silly, and I really, really like that. But I think once you've got the other characters in, right, because this is going to be multiplayer as far as I can tell, that's why we have the different color characters. I might be wrong about that, but my understanding is the intention of this is for it to be a multiplayer game. Then I imagine what we're going for in terms of like where this exists in the indie game market is this is a sort of cooperative, almost like a tycoon. And when I say tycoon, I'm talking about like, you know, boomers like myself will remember these games called tycoon games from the early 2000s, which were like proper business simulators like Roller Coaster Tycoon. But the Zoomers and Gen Alpha, that's not what a tycoon game is to them. A tycoon game to those guys is one of these maps in Roblox or Fortnite where you just like... It's an incremental clicker game, basically, but in a physical environment where you go and spend 500 coins here and then you get this upgrade and then you can buy other things and stuff like that. And there's no way of losing it. It's just about accumulation because it's an incremental game, but it's in a physical space. That's what sort of younger folks think of when they hear the term tycoon game now. And I think what this game is leaning towards is like a kind of like friendslop, one of those, right? And, you know, friendslop is a terrible term, but it is basically, I think that the thing that makes a friendslop game is it's usually a cooperative game that you play with friends, and it's relatively low stakes, and you don't really need to learn anything to get involved, right? You can just jump in and immediately help, and if one of the players is not very good at the game, it doesn't like ruin the game for everyone, right? So I played, what's the frog one? Gang of Frogs. Played that with my son recently. Was very, very silly, but very, very easy to pick up. Right, and a lot of these kind of friendship group games that you play with 4 people, they're very, very easy to pick up, and they don't actually have the same design considerations as sort of more hardcore cooperative games. So if I think of hardcore cooperative games, I would think of Left 4 Dead, and even something like Overcooked, which is quite cute and kind of casual looking. Those games are sort of designed so that if a player is playing in an antisocial way or just not really paying attention, it lets the team down, right? And I think that's the distinction for me when I look at what's getting released and being called friendslop, is they don't really have that pure cooperative game design focus where if a player is letting the team down, the team will fail. And there's something positive about that, I would say, because any of you who have an experience of playing like online team-based games, like, you know, arena shooters like Overwatch or MOBAs, will understand that a lot of the toxicity in those games isn't actually trash talk between opponents, it's within the team. And like, people are horrible to people in online games because they feel let down by them and they're losing because of that person, or they feel like they're losing because of that person. So having like fun cooperative games you can do with your friends where it doesn't matter if you suck a little bit is quite cool. Now I think the thing about this game, and like the thing about the goofy presentation and everything, is it's probably gonna attract, if it does become like a full-fledged multiplayer game, which I think is the intention and why we have these different models, it is going to attract people that have come from those simpler friendslop games. So I think you're going to eventually, if you really want to have a proper go with this, as it being with it being like a commercial project, you're going to have to eventually structure this game in a way that it introduces things in a much kind of slower way. Because having a friendship group of 4 people who don't want to read run in here and have to go through the hallway of help and stuff, is just gonna, that group of people is gonna bounce off it immediately, because you're basically getting sort of kids that have only just graduated to playing indie games on Steam from Roblox or Fortnite in the last 2 years, and everything they're used to playing is incredibly low friction, doesn't have text instructions, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's a set of considerations I think you should have with this game, and you don't necessarily have to take them, but I think the sort of design space it fits into in the market is like this very low friction space where people don't need to read to learn how to play the game and all of that kind of stuff. And so I would be thinking about those things as you work out what the rest of this game is, because it's, at the moment, it's like we have to do lots of learning by reading. The actual interactions themselves are great, but they're so surreal and strange that you kind of need to be taught them by doing them, and not in a like the sequence we currently have in that sort of interstitial tutorial is like, this is what this does, you can do it now, and it doesn't like require you to do it a bunch of times before you can move on and unlock more complexity. So yeah, I really like this game. We do need to come up with a better term than friendslop lower, but unfortunately that's just when it comes to the terms that like people use in a market. You know, games are a playful medium, people use silly names for things, we can't get away from that. You know, people started using Metroid Brainia, terrible name, you know, designers said that's a terrible name, we should call them knowledge games instead, no one listened. It happens in board games as well, you know, big box, glossy, drama-driven board games like Haunting on Hill House or whatever it's called. It's not called that. Those kind of games, all of the Star Wars games are called Ameritrash games. That's a derogatory term as well, but it's a kind of a term of endearment. And I think, you know, we had a discussion about this in the Discord last night. I think there are better terms for things that are helpful for us as designers to use, because sometimes the way that fans use terms don't really help identify how that game is designed. But we need to sort of draw a line between like the popular terms that people use that we can't really change, and we need to use them for marketing reasons, and like what's actually helpful for us sort of internally. And that applies to like the discussion about whether something's an indie game, and it also applies to like these more micro discussions about what a specific genre is, you know. So like a classic one would be Souls-like. I personally, when I think of Souls-like, I think of the game structure that is about failure and doing corpse runs. I don't necessarily think of a third-person camera where you control a guy with a sword and you parry. For me, that's just an ARPG. That's just an action RPG. That's a like Devil May Cry like, depending on how fast it is. The Souls-like tag for me is about the corpse runs, but people use that that tag in like totally different ways, and it's confusing. So you just have to be like really clear about what you mean when it comes to what you're designing and stuff like that, and be aware that like the terms that are out there in kind of popular culture for games are going to vary from the ones that are actually useful for us as we're developing stuff, because that's just there's a difference between doing something as a craft and engaging with it as a hobby, and the kind of the fans are always going to use these silly playful terms because that's the level that they're engaging with it at. We've got WOIM and we've got Kingshaven. I'm going to switch to WOIM now, which is going to melt my brain, but you know, that's what happens every time someone makes me play anything mildly soccer band related. Eurojank, yeah. Friendslop complimentary. Right, although a fictional documentary is a mockumentary, isn't it? I thought that's just what mockumentary meant. But this is the thing. It's like you know, genres have a different purpose for consumers and for creatives. And for creatives, it's like, okay, if I say I'm making one of these, what does that do? Well, it gives me like an understanding of what my players are going to expect, right? We've had a lot of conversations recently about, you know, there might be a game that's good and it's got all these good elements, but is it really what you expect from that type of game? You know, when I go down to sit and play a card game, am I expecting to read lots of character dialogue? No, I'm not, right? So it's a risky decision to put character dialogue in a card-driven game, because the cards are sort of communicating to you what sort of game it is and where it sits on this big chart of all of the things a video game can be. I'm going to show you this diagram that I saw on Blue Sky the other day that I think is wonderful. I mean, it was posted sort of... It's one of those things where it's like just hovering between being a shitpost and being a genuine engagement with theory, and that's my favorite type of thing. Max Krieger, shout out Max Krieger. It worked on Among Us VR. That's interesting. Speaking of friendslop, this is such a wonderful diagram slash model slash shitpost. These are all the things that a video game can be, right? It can be a piece of media art, it can be a toy, and it can be a game in the ludological sense. So when you're designing a game, your game is going to exist somewhere in this. And so for a toy, we've got very easy examples of that, of like things like Tiny Glade and Townscaper, which are, they don't have a goal, right? There's nothing you need to do in those games. You just sit and you do the thing. Anything that's like modeled on like just watching a fish tank or something like that would be a toy. It doesn't have a goal. And that's kind of a reasonably easy thing to define. Now, when we have the game ludological corner, this is like what you're doing when you do pure game design, right? So in a really big game studio, like you have game designers that just care about this part, and then someone else does the story and stuff. And the game designer in that sense just cares about this, like what are the rules, what are the mechanics and stuff. And then you've got like the media art part, which is like, okay, this thing mainly exists to express something or to tell a story or to like, you know, show a particular type of experience. And obviously the kind of gradations between those things, and like understanding where in this space your game actually exists is going to make your life so much easier. And I think that example of, you know, I sit down to play a card game and then there's loads of characters talking on the screen, or I sit down to play a Survivors like and there's loads of characters and loads of lore. That's an example of like, I have come here to engage with this side, like the toy game side of the thing, the, you know, I just want to have a pleasing interaction, or I want to like win a challenge, right? That's the kind of toy versus game thing. The if I see your game is about cards, or I see your game is about high scores, I'm sort of expecting something down here. And then when you start like trying to make me care about characters, you're pulling it up here, And I'm like, I don't want to go up there. That's not what I come to this type of game for. The reason they've put the Ocean of Simulacra in the middle there is because simulation games don't really simulation games sort of don't really belong anywhere around here, and they can kind of, this is like an endless space. So when you play like a farming sim or something, it's like it's not really a game in a lot of ways because it just exists to simulate farming. But there are parts of it that are very gamified, and there are parts of it that are toy, and there are parts of it that are about representing the real world and being art. This, like I said, this is a very silly diagram, but it's quite helpful for the purposes of this kind of conversation of just like acknowledging that video games is such a broad thing. And when you decide to make a certain type of video game, there's an audience for that, and they're coming to it for a particular type of thing. And that's really the most useful thing we get out of genre as developers, is that it's a signpost to understand what people are coming to our experience for. And the problem that a lot of us have is we make something that belongs down here or belongs down here or belongs up here, and we try and pull in too much of the rest of this big massive space of all the things video games can be, and it ends up feeling like really confused and like it doesn't deliver any particular experience very, very well, because it's just trying to be too many things at once. And I think that's how genre and an understanding of genres is helpful to game developers, is it helps you to understand like what your game is not, because there's a massive space of what a game can be. Like, I think the variation in games as a medium is just so much wider than any other type of media. You know, like if you said we're going to watch a film, outside of the most avant-garde movies, they generally use the same language for like what you're looking at and what camera angles mean and stuff like that, how long it is, how the different parts of it relate to each other, like how the music and the acting and the different sort of sub-media within a film relate to each other, is very consistent across films. Whether you watch like a Marvel film or like an art house A24 film, there's like a very much narrower kind of idea of what a film is, and like a song, a recorded song. Okay, you're going to get a 7-minute prog song and a 3-minute pop song, but within that there's just certain things that are just much more universal, like scales of music, what a groove is, what a chorus is, all of those types of things. Video games are so broad, and what genres do for us is just help to narrow down and like cut out some of those things and say, look, we don't need to worry about story in this game, or in this game we don't need to worry about like economies and upgrades, or in this game we don't need to worry about environments and the kind of, you know, atmospherics of like environmental sound and lighting and stuff. And that can be really, really liberating. And I think when people are starting out, they try and make things that are just pulling in all different directions, and that's fine for learning, because you need to work out what you're good at, and the best way to work out what you're good at is to try and do everything and then reflect and go, okay, I don't really want to do those things, so I'm going to stay away from those in future. And all of that kind of just comes down to like what stage you're at. And I think the best games we see on this channel are from the people that have been doing it a little while. And it's not just that they've got really good at one thing, it's that they're actually actively choosing to not do certain things anymore that perhaps they've tried in the past or they're just not interested in. And that just means they occupy a much clearer space on that kind of chart of all of the things that video games can be. Can I link what you want, the link to the silly chart? Yeah, let me see if I can find it. You want the I mean the next video we're doing sort of is a little bit about this as well, because I'm sort of talking about how when we talk about what theory is for a game designer, there's stuff that we all use, and then there's stuff that is going to depend on like what type of game you're making. And it's the same sort of principle. You know, if you're making a game about martial arts, you probably need to learn about body mechanics from somewhere, and that's not going to come from game design theory. It's going to come from something to do with martial arts. Hang on. Copy link to post. I put it in general design and creativity. Right, let's check out WOIM. So that long theory ramble was because I'm trying to avoid starting this game because soccer band games make me feel stupid. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what slop generally means at the moment, isn't it? Is it means something is a low quality shovelware that's put out to make money. And, I mean, a lot of the games being called friendslop are definitely not slop. But some of that comes down to not being too precious as well as a creator, you know? So we've got a lovely level select screen that uses the same sort of interaction as the main game, which is quite neat. And we eat apples to grow longer, and that means we can do more stuff. But then it also means we get stuck. Do I have an undo? Z undo. So what that is teaching me is I actually need to eat the apples in an unintuitive order, otherwise I can't fit back out of the level. So we eat as few apples as we can on the way down, and then back around. Nope, still not quite getting it. That's because maybe we need to go that way. Nope, still not getting it. What am I doing wrong? So I have to go through that one. I can't help that. Or maybe there's more apples than I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I need all of them. Okay. There we go. Got it. I really, really love the way that this is rendered. Like, you've got the everything shifting per frame, and then also the worm movement as well. It's just really, really pretty. I love a wobbly line. Sort of like MTV Liquid Television, Beavis and Butthead kind of thing. They call it line boil in those old cartoons. Okay, so I think the stuff on the left we need to do last so that we can... Although that's a smaller chamber, so maybe it is better to go up into that first. That last apple we don't need to touch until we're on our way back. So we go up there, and then I feel like we probably are gonna need to do this first. Yeah, did it in one that time. You do get build up a little sense of like how big the worm is going to get when you're passing into different spaces. Can't hear the music and sound effects. I don't know how loud they go up. Do I have options for them? Let's just put everything up. They're quite quiet my end as well. I'm sort of... There we go. Music's fun. So that opens that, but I'm not long enough yet to go up there, so I have to... So you actually have to grow longer in the level select screen as well to open up the bonus levels. I remember this. So what do you notice that's different about this pink door, eh? So good. Huh. What was the purpose of that? That was strange. Maybe if I go from this side? Huh. I can push the scissors round. Interesting. But I don't understand why. So if I was here, and I could somehow cut... No, that's not going to work either. Oh, this is a real brain scrambler. I don't understand what I have no idea how any of this works. So... when I use the scissors, it reverses which end my eye is on. And when would I need to do that? I could be like this and then somehow cut the end, but I can only move in the direction of my eye. Now I can move where the scissors are by pushing them out from here, but I don't understand what that gets me. So there's no way that I can press this button and then use the scissors either, because I'll be stuck where I've gone in to press the button. That makes sense. But heavy scissors. Wonder what was vibrating. It was my my controller was vibrating. Yeah, when someone's using a when someone's using the mouse and keyboard in your game, please turn off the controller vibration. I've had this happen quite a lot recently. One of the things that's good about this, right? I'm completely stuck. Or can you circle around the scissors and push it into your own body? That's a good idea. Let me just try that again. I just got some debug text up and I didn't know why. One of the things that's good, just a quick aside, one of the things that's good about this kind of game structure where you've got the selection on the map, this works very, very well for this type of puzzle game. Because with these kind of puzzle games, you're waiting for a player to have a eureka moment, and if they can't pass a certain level, they're just like hard blocked on the rest of the game. So if you have these kind of sections where they can quit out of one level and go and do something else, they don't get stuck entirely on the game when they're stuck on one puzzle. Bubba Is You has the same structure. It's a really helpful game structure to do when you make a puzzle game, is to like have the the choice of which puzzles you do next have a little bit of optionality, and you can do them in different orders. And, you know, obviously here it's locked, so we can't just jump really far ahead, but we have the option of like 2 or 3 to pick from. And that means if one of them is completely bamboozling us, we have some options about where to go next. Let's hop back in. Okay, so we can push the scissors into ourselves like that, and then we end up with 2 worms. That's what we want. So the scissors aren't intended for you to use the way that I was a minute ago. They're actually so you can do that. Whee! Yeah, the witness is structured that way as well. That's a good example. And the Talos principle as well. I couldn't get into the witness. I think the puzzles were just too much of like learning the same thing over and over again that I didn't find sort of inherently interesting enough. Might give it another chance one day, but I just found it really dull. Can we... Is that... What's that for? Is there a rock, paper, scissors thing going on with this rock? Is it for... Is it for damaging the scissors or something? Maybe the rock is to let us be able to push the scissors without cutting ourselves? Yep. I'm too big. I'm too big to do the thing I wanted to do. I need to cut myself so that I only have one little... Yeah, I have no idea how you design these puzzles. I guess you must have to, like, design them backwards or something. And the other thing is, I mean, this is very, very difficult. I think I said this last time I played this game. This is very, very difficult from the get-go. But I think that's okay, because it just means the game kind of gets to the point quicker and you know what you're getting. And I think if you had a puzzle game where it gradually ramped up to this difficulty, it would, like, give people a full sense of security that it was going to be a simpler game. I have a idea. I need to somehow keep this pair of scissors there so that I don't... Let me try this again. Right. And then I get this guy. Oh no, I've pushed the scissors into the wall. I wonder if there's a way that I can bring the scissors back so that... Nope. That's not what we wanted either. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that one. We're going to try the other one. Oh no, there isn't another one. Okay. Maybe I messed something up at the start. Although I think that is what the stone is for, unless you're supposed to... Unless I'm forgetting about the stone and the stone has got a use that I just hadn't thought of. And the scissors are like a red herring for that part of the level. I'm pretty sure rocks can push... I think everything can push buttons. I think it's one of those types of things. So if we were to push that out... and then come back around... and then push this down and go around there... we could push the rock out. But I'm not sure what that gives us. Especially seeing as the scissors are then stuck out there and blocking us. So we would have to get the scissors out of the way and then do something like that. That gets the rock back out. No. Oh. Oh my goodness. Wow. What a puzzle. There's like a really nice moment there, and I think puzzle games baffle me. The people's ability to make them just hurts my brain in and of itself. There's just a moment towards the end there where I could just sort of see it coming together, and then I sort of saw the two worms stuck together, and I thought I was blocked, and I didn't realize that I could just turn into the last hallway and get to the end. And it just like this kind of the solution going in and out of focus, and it is like something going in and out of focus, but the thing that you can see is like a set of logical things. So it's like a really weird feeling of just like your comprehension of the solution, sort of like you feel like you're getting there and then it slips away. It's like when you're trying to remember a word and you can't remember the word, or you can't remember someone's name, and it's sort of like you're having those moments of like, oh, I think it might be that, and it's like that kind of feeling that it produces. It's so strange, and designing for that is wild. And I think it kind of shows that you do need to go to like, maybe not every time, but with a game like this, it sort of pays to go quite complex very quickly, Because otherwise, if that puzzle was later on in a game that started off very soft and casual, I think it would it would be bad because people would get into it, think it was a really simple game. The people that like hardcore puzzles wouldn't play it, and they wouldn't get to the point where they get the hardcore puzzles. And then the people that want really easy stuff that isn't really a real kind of brain burner will get to that point and quit. So you're sort of like making no one happy in that situation. So I think having a puzzle like that, like 5 puzzles into a game or however deep we got, it kind of makes sense because it just sort of lets you know what type of puzzle game this is very, very quickly. Okay, let's get the last game of the day running. And that is... What's the last game? What's the last game? My brain is falling out. Kingshaven, that's it. Which is now on Steam. It says update queued. I thought I already downloaded it. Here we go. Right, we're going to check this out for the last 20 minutes or so today. There will be a little bit of a delay in the VOD going up because I will cut off that beginning where we had the bad sound where the wrong mic was activated. Right, I had a lot of fun with this game before. I said very positive things about it. This is a deck builder with a kind of blackjack push your luck mechanic where you're just drawing the cards from your deck that you've... Sorry, my second monitor has just gone off for no reason. You're just drawing the cards from your deck that you've put into it before. Let me just work out what's going on with that. Streamlab's still running, just... Second monitor's gone off. One sec. I'll fix that later. I'll just assume you can see me. Let me just put that onto this screen for a sec. How do I do that? There we go. Make sure you can hear this game. It's quite quiet, I think. There we go. Streamception. Right, do we have sound effects? That's all that matters right now. Okay. I will get YouTube open on my phone so I can see the chat because my second screen has just gone down and we're too close to the end of the stream for me to spend much time working out why that is. 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. I just Had to unplug some stuff and plug it back in again. Okay, so kind of blackjack, push your luck deck builder. You are defending a little kingdom. Your deck of cards is the kind of characters you have to help you do that. And you also get to like build your little castle, which is basically sort of like relic type upgrades or Joker type upgrades from one of these other games, but it's framed or themed as being like a little castle that you build in the corner, which is really nice. And the thing that I liked about this when I played previously is the variation between the builds you can make between runs just feels really pronounced, even when you're just starting the game. And that kind of goes a long way to selling me on one of these games. It's just kind of like seeing that the deck building actually matters, and it's not just like every time you play the game you build the same deck, right? Oh no, it's not blackjack based. You do actually play the cards. So you've got the cards, they have a cost. And then you can draw extra cards by ringing the bell, but this uses up your food, which is like your energy mechanic for playing your characters. So they have a wake effect that happens as soon as you play them. He gives me 2 gold, and then at nightfall you get, at the end of the turn, the nightfall effects trigger. Yeah, sorry, it's not push your luck. I was kind of misremembering it. I've played so many of those games recently. And then I'm not going to play the jailer because we use him for banishing people. Don't show me that tip again. End day. I don't want to banish a citizen. Oh, you don't actually have to use the action. Okay, that's not a thing that happens automatically. So I could have played him anyway, but I didn't really need to. So a jack of all trades gives you one of each resource, and we need to build up our damage so we can attack the incoming monster and defend the town. That's kind of how this works. I will very quiet this game. I'm a doctor. Supposed to be streaming to YouTube at the same time, but I think the YouTube stream has cut off. YouTube's still fine, cool. It's showing the stream as having ended on YouTube. It's so confusing. Draw a human, a creature, and a machine. I don't know if I have everything for that. Spider egg. When this card is discarded, draw a card and summon 4 spiderlings. Let's go for spiders. Let's do a spider build. But we need to just be able to discard that card to make it happen. Also, I don't think I have anything yet that does that. So we need to always play our knight because we need to deal enough damage to this guy before the skull gets along to here. Just can't use my spiders at all yet. Ah, yeah, Oscar, I keep forgetting about the bell. That's a good mechanic. Yeah, so you can use food to ring the bell and then you draw extra cards. That's draw a creature from your deck. That has trigger another person's wake, which I can put on that. No, that doesn't work because I don't have a creature in my deck. But I can... Oh. So, when I used the rooster, it let me use it on someone that I couldn't really use it on it, and it would be nice if we kept that action and then could use it on someone later on. Because it just sort of told me, no, you can't use this action this way, and it still consumed the action, which I don't think is that kind of what people would expect the UX there to be. Yeah, I think, yeah, anything you can do to, like, remind people about the bell mechanic is going to be a good idea. If you frequently notice people are forgetting a particular thing in your game, then you need to do that. You probably need to do that. Right, she turns gold into food. The witch, brew and drink a dreadful potion. It contains side effects. The nurse... I mean, that sounds terrible. That doesn't sound like there's anything good about it. The way that that's worded. I'm going to try it, though. I want to see what happens. Choose a citizen to reduce their food cost permanently. We're going to go with the knight, because the knight is always useful. For, like... avoiding the fail state of the game of getting our village crushed. For every 10 gold you have, gain 2 gold at nightfall. That's neat. When a citizen is banished, deal 10 damage. When you summon a citizen, summon a copy of them. So these ones that require blood gems are like the big power-ups, and then the gold, like harder, like rarer and harder to get. I'm gonna go with the bank though, because that just seems like a consistently helpful thing and good to get early on, because it's gonna just make our money go up quicker. Okay. Right, we're going to use the jailer to banish the spider... I can't actually banish the spider egg, though, because the spider egg is in my hand. Okay. Foolish. And then we can use the rooster to trigger the farmer's thing, which gives us more gold. That's good. We've got a eyeball monster coming in. For every knight on field, deal 5 damage and +1 food. That seems pretty good. I wish I hadn't got the spider now, because the... hang on. Just as the moon was rising, an unusual-looking traveller came by our city walls, riding an even weirder caravan. An assortment of potions and medical equipment was hiding off the side. To take 2 and form 1, that was the goal. To your shock, a few citizens stepped up to talk to the traveller. Which citizens volunteered to fuse in the experiment? Okay, I think some of these you can probably reduce how much text is in them. Like, I get that you're trying to be evocative and stuff, but we want to make the time it takes for someone to understand the situation and move on to their choice relatively small in a game like this. So I would just look at this paragraph and just think, how could you say these 2 sentences in 1 sentence? Just as the moon was rising, probably not necessary. We can see it's nighttime. An unusual looking... you can just say it was an unusual caravan, and it's sort of implied that the traveller is in the caravan, you know. I think there's just too much here in terms of actual words. We're going to merge the rooster and the spider egg, because I don't have any use for the spider egg, because I can't discard it to trigger it anyway. Three days until enemy attack. Right, it who watches. Right, I've got a nice synergy here, because the hunter draws the rooster for me, and the rooster plays on the farmer, which gives us a gives us extra gold. But okay, the abomination that we made out of the 2 creatures doesn't count as a creature, So it doesn't take over their creature tag. So now I don't have any creatures in the deck. So now the hunter doesn't trigger that synergy that I had before. What we can do is try and pay food and draw cards until we get to a point where we've got the lieutenant out so that it can kind of add to the... So that's unplayable. What's it for then? So it's got these 2 cards inside of it. It says stuff about it, but it says it's unplayable, so I don't know what that is for, really. But let's play the lieutenant. We get extra food and extra damage. The lieutenant's doing 10 damage because it does 5 for each knight. What's a reaction? Trigger an effect when another citizen uses their action. Oh, that's kind of cool. Let's get him. He costs 2 food, but he's generating food, so that's fine. Right, let's see what the witch does now. Okay, so she's going to make one of these. Draw 3 cards, deal 10. I'm going to go for draw 3 cards. And, oh, this is the side effect. Okay. Restore 5 health to the enemy. Banish 2 random citizens in your deck for 2 days. Let's try that. Ah, the mutant is unplayable because the spider egg is unplayable. Okay. So, I had a bad set of things to combine there because one is triggered by playing it and the other one is triggered by discarding it. Very funny that you sort of collect these characters and then you're like using the jailer to banish them. It's kind of amusing set of things going on there thematically. I like it. I mean, that's the other thing about these types of games. I was talking earlier about, you know, when you've got a card game, it doesn't necessarily suggest a story. And part of that is because the thematic components of the card game allow a story to just happen in the player's head without there needing to be an explicit story. So the jailer jailing the witch, that just implies loads of stuff that's going on in this town that the player can just sort of imagine in their own head, and the game doesn't need to tell a story about that because the story just sort of happened in the player's head because of the theme of those particular characters. The Safari Guide. We're gonna lose a farmer. Knight, farmer. So the reaction tag is quite cool, so it triggers every time another character does an action, but the only action I have is the jailer, and I don't really want to jail anyone else at the moment. So I'm going to keep the baker in my hand. So the Safari guy gives us a creature. We've got some rats that are going to poison the big eye, which is just about to get us. It's going to kill us in a minute. Nate said the monsters feel like they're missing a bit of impact. I think some of it is to do with how pushed to the side they are as well. Yeah, like a few visual things. So like one of the things for me that I think I said last time is just that the green is a little bit too saturated for The green just feels very like light and bright, and it makes it hard to see the characters. I think we might do some colouring in a minute, because every stream is going to turn into a colouring in session. Also, this is sort of, if you look at what's going on here, the stuff I'm playing is here, and there's like a big dead space in the middle of the screen, and I know that it eventually gets filled up with your characters, but that does mean for a while there's a dead space here, and I think maybe the enemy should be here so that they're at the right of the center of the screen, and the grid of characters should be like fewer columns and shifted along to the left. So we're going to do a quick screen grab. I am going to do the coloring because people seem to like watching that happen, which is kind of funny. We like a makeover. Burning Flurber, are you thinking of the Yorg? Like the board gamey one that you can sit and kind of play and take turns on? Yeah, I don't know what the upper limit is on how many villagers you get in this, but again, if you think of games like Slay the Spire and look at how centered the characters are, they have quite a lot of negative space around them, and that's to help you to sort of keep all of the relevant information in the middle of the screen, so that because when you put something right over here like this, it just sort of, it kind of subliminally communicates that it's not that important, which you don't want to do with the kind of, this is the lose condition of the game, right? Got a rancher who invites a sheep, a butcher who kills a creature. Let's go for the grizzly bear. So you can basically build a deck that's just all animals protecting your town, which is kind of very amusing. And I like that idea. But I don't think... Oh no, we might beat the bush lurker. The bush lurker is the one that we beat last time. It was the second bad guy that we didn't beat. I'm very wary of any suggestions to like zoom a pixel art game in or out, because I've had some bad experiences of trying to do that recently. You kind of lose any sense of what the proper zoom level is, and it becomes really, really hard to manage. Okay. We're just gonna wasp you up so bad. Just gonna keep adding wasps. Hell yeah. And the day was saved, and the townspeople rejoiced. Well, the waspomancer, had stung the bushlurker to death. Barbarian. I didn't even look at what he did. He just looked cool. The knight suddenly went missing this time. And draw a card, discard up to 2 cards, deal 6 damage for each card discarded. That's pretty cool. Stop right there, criminal scum! Yeah, you've got this feels I think one of the things that's already working very, very well with this game is it feels... I was saying this to someone else yesterday, but I mean, it goes a long way in a game like this when you've got cards and you've got relic-y type upgrade unlocks. It feels generous. It feels, you know, I've come to this screen twice. There have been different options there each time. So if I was on Steam and I was playing the demo of this and I played 2 runs and I saw different stuff each time, that would help convince me that this is a game that has lots of content in, right? And any game that has deck building in, that's what people want. They don't necessarily want to start with all the content because that's confusing. But when they get to make choices about what goes in their deck or what upgrades they want, seeing that the game is relatively generous with that stuff is going to be helpful. Oh yeah, the Barbarian's great. Deal 13 damage and reduce the cost of a random card in your hand by 2-1. Okay. So you can combo him with the Grizzly Bear to save 3 food. The Grizzly Bear shuffles bear cubs into your deck, and then at nightfall it deals extra damage if you've got bear cubs on the field. So we've got the bear cubs in our deck, and when we draw them, they're going to make the Grizzly Bear deal more damage. Let's use the Jailer to draw more cards and banish one of the farmers. And then we'll get 2 more cards, and that means we can play a bear cub this turn, and we can play a wasp, and we can use our last food to play another wasp as well. So we're going to be poisoning them, and our bear cub is allowing our bear mama to do an extra 10 damage. Can you see how much more visible the characters are when we switch to nighttime, though? Just because the kind of pastel green, just they don't show up as well on that. So I think maybe just the distinction between the daytime and the nighttime needs to be a little bit less extreme. I think the nighttime looks beautiful, but the visibility of the characters when it's very, very kind of pale green is harmed a little bit. Okay. Get the Grizzly out. Draw a card. Let's discard the Knight. I should have used the Archer before because they've got a reaction that triggers when someone else uses an action. I keep forgetting how reactions work. It's very hard to sort of balance like what the player should remember for themselves versus what you need to remind them of. All of those things are going to be quite challenging, but I think anytime you've got an unusual mechanic like this spend extra food to draw a card thing, you're going to probably need to remind people a little bit more of it. Okay, we've got the Archer there now. It's going to deal 4 damage every time we do an action, and we've got 2 guards that both have a active action. So let's put them in. And we'll discard a Wasp. We're going to play the Grizzly Bear so we have a better chance of drawing the club with the next draw. We didn't draw the cub, but that's okay. Killed the boss. Much better, right? Which also shows that I learnt. The first time I got killed by the second boss, the second time we beat it. It's great. I'm going to have a look at what my castle options are, and then we should do a little bit of a copy-pasty, move stuff around type exercise, I think. Because I do think that the game is suffering a little bit from having things pushed to the outskirts of the screen a little bit. Let's minimize that for a minute, and just to end the stream, I'll only spend a minute doing this. So, Monster Train, just show me that picture. Roguebook. Like, nothing is, it's almost like there's a sort of inch of safe space around the edge where the stuff doesn't push up to. Monster Train right in the middle. Slay the Spire. You know, nothing is in that sort of outside 15-20% of the screen. And I think you sort of think about where the player's eyes are resting, and I know it sounds really daft to be talking about how far your eyes move or how far your mouse moves because it's such a small amount, but these things do sort of like make people think a certain way about the things on the screen. So what I would be tempted to do with your game is to take all of the stuff that the player puts into the game world and bring it over a bit, just a bit, you know. So like the characters go in a row of maybe 6 up to here, and then they go down in more rows down there, and then make sure that this kind of comes over. I'm not going to have time to do a full revamp like we were doing with that game yesterday, but like, you know, bring that over there. And maybe you even do something like, I'm just going to fill in some gaps so that we do, so it kind of looks a little bit more like what it would look like. Push the whole river over. Butchering it this time. Sometimes it's worth doing these kind of exercises for yourself as well, because I mean, I can see the way that this game is structured. It's like it is happening in one big game scene and the camera like pans down, and you can, when you goes to nighttime, it goes to a different area and you lay everything out there. And that kind of stuff is a good indicator of like why doing this kind of work or rework can be challenging, because it's like you've just got everything set up in a very specific way and you might not want to like edit it too much, and that's like totally understandable as well. So occasionally just doing things in another medium that isn't your game engine can be very, very helpful, and I do this all the time with my own projects. Like I'm constantly we don't want that on that mode, we just want it on normal. Like I'm constantly taking screenshots of my game and like drawing on them on my iPad and stuff like that, because it allows me to get out of the box of the game engine and just think about what the game actually needs to be, rather than always like thinking about what's kind of easy to do with the project based on how it currently is, which you need to do for practicality's sake sometimes, but I think occasionally it helps to be a little bit more freewheeling with it. So if you do that, then it's kind of just immediately communicating that all the important stuff is here in the middle, whereas before it's like they start over here and they gradually build over to the right, and this goes over here and there's all this dead space in the middle, which is really kind of like the prime space for the stuff that matters in the game, and we sort of pushed everything so that it's around that space rather than actually occupying it. So I would do that sort of thing, or think about doing that sort of thing, and then that even maybe opens up the opportunity to, you can have this counter like you've got it now, but you might also do something like hang on, this day counter that you've got, the sort of danger counter that goes down this side, if you move, you might even move it up here, and then you could even like actually have the creature physically move as well. So you might have a path where they get closer and there's like a little path behind them, and they maybe start here and they gradually get closer. That could feel quite good as well, because it just makes it a little bit more literal and much quicker to understand. And then the other thing I would just look at is just doing a couple of different takes on this green specifically. The actual like animation of the grass moving, that kind of looks like what you'd get in a sort of old anime, is really, really beautiful. I love that effect. I just think that if you look at these guys from a distance, the value difference between the characters and the background isn't high enough. So if I were to If I were to make this black and white, for example, they just completely disappear, right? And one of the things about visual design and art direction is if your game is in black and white, you should still be able to pick out things, because the value distinction between the foreground and background objects should be high enough that you can do that. And this is kind of showing that that kind of pastel green is the same sort of value as some of these other colors. And I think you can kind of fix that by just tinkering with it a little bit more. It's like, it's really aesthetically pleasing. I like how it looks, but I think it just doesn't serve the game very well. And there's a bunch of different approaches you could take to that. One is to like change the color. The other one is to make sure that is to put outlines on things, which I don't think you want to do based on the style of the game that I can see everywhere else. But you know, if we were to just, even that doesn't work very well, because I mean, that's because they're on top of those other colors. Let me just try and grab all of the colors together. That one and that one. You've got 3 shades of green, right? So we'd grab them. Why is it doing the top layer as well? That's not what I want. Let me just... So what we want is that color. Aha, I see what's happening. It's oh. It can't distinguish between that grey and that green. It thinks they're too similar, which is very, very funny. So I need to turn the threshold down on my color selection. Right, that should just give us the greens. And then we can kind of mess around with keeping those guys the same color. So if you do that, they immediately pop and you can see them properly, but it's probably a little bit too dark for it to be a representation of daytime, right? I would just play around with it a little bit more. Even like a deeper green like that, they stand out more. But if you want to keep things this bright pale pastel type color, then you probably need to make everything else darker. So you would need to you know, make the actual characters higher contrast and darker or something like that. But I think to make the characters more visible, doing stuff with the background green is probably the quickest, like, easy win. Not like that though. That's horrible. But I think where I had it before, where it was sort of just a bit more. And it's funny because I usually don't recommend people make their grass actually grass colored. Usually you need to design the color of the grass to fit the other art assets, and sometimes that means having very washed out grass. Sometimes it means making the grass like a dark mossy color. It really depends on the rest of the visual design of the game, but I think something like that is going to make them easier to see, especially when you've got these little icons and nothing has an outline. And having an outlineless style is fine. I understand that's like just the art style that you're working in, but it does mean that you need to be more conscious of these other things, because an outline sort of saves you from having to do this stuff, because the outlines just make it clearer where one thing ends and another thing begins, but you don't have the benefit of outlines, so you're going to have to like deal with these things another way, and that is by just being very, very aware of like color adjacencies and stuff like that. Then maybe also the contrast between these different greens in the background is quite extreme for what element of the game it is. You know, that it's a decorative thing. The little animation you do where the grass is ruffling and stuff is really, really beautiful, but it maybe just doesn't need to be quite as pronounced. So the other thing I would think about doing is just bring these colors so that they're a little bit closer together. Maybe I can do that with a colorize. Hang on. So that you've got like this green is just a slightly darker version of the other green, you know? And then this green... I need to learn these keyboard shortcuts. Sorry, I'm taking so long. Just bringing them closer together. I know it looks less dramatic and it kind of takes away from some of the cool effect that you had before, but it's just making sure that the things that are background in the game like cognitively translate to being background for the player in terms of their perception of what's going on in the screen. And yeah, you just need to let the visibility of the important stuff in the game guide your visual design. And you don't have, well, you don't want to do that. You don't have outlines to help you, so you gotta find other ways. And if you make the contrast a bit lower between these shadows on highlights on the grass, you can also do, you know, it feels like maybe if you want to vary the game or have like seasons or anything, you can gradually tint the whole thing as well. But I think the contrast between the bright bits and dark bits of the grass is kind of part of the problem there. I wouldn't say that green is exactly perfect either, but if you go back to your original, these little yellow symbols and stuff, they just don't show up. So, you know, maybe that's not the route you want to take with it. Maybe you want to outline stuff instead. Maybe some of the interface elements need outlines, even if the characters aren't going to have outlines. Maybe they need shadows. Maybe there's something like that could help. But all of the design elements that go into your art style, you got to think about like how you differentiate objects and stuff like that. And the very high contrast pale grass is just making it very, very hard to see what matters in the game at any given moment, I think. Yeah, thanks for being patient with me while I did that, Oscar. I know it's like tedious, but again, I try and focus on things where it's like one reasonably small change that gives you loads of benefit in terms of how easy your game is to engage with. And I think the color in this game is a little bit of a problem for visibility, and just trying to push all of your characters and the enemy a little bit into the center. Imagine there's a screen within a screen that's like the middle 2/3 of the whole screen, and that's where the actual action is. Your cards are in an intuitive place. The cards are where they should be. Everything else kind of gets the rest of the screen, but the monsters and the characters should be in that space in the middle. And I think it's just going to make the whole thing easier to understand what's going on. But I really, really like this game. I may schedule like a longer stream with it at some point where I sit and play it for like 2 hours, because it's the sort of game that I could just happily get into for that length of time. I think you have like all of the ingredients for a potential success with this game. There's lots of appealing stuff here, and little tweaks to the visual design are just going to make it really kind of sing, I think. Right. That's it for today. This was like a bonus stream this week because the community supporters stream on Wednesday had more games than I knew what to do with. So we moved all of the games that have been on stream before to today, Friday. And I will be adding links to them. If they're like an open playtest that you can join now, I'll be adding links to them to the VOD after the stream when I get a moment. And you can go and check them out yourself. It was Goreticulture, that was King's Haven, we had WOIM, and what was the other thing? There was one more that I've forgotten about. What was it? I've got the list over here. The other one was... And, well, you can't stay here. That was the kind of board gamey type thing where you were kind of camping and exploring a map. I really like all of these games. I think there's some really great stuff going on here, and I look forward to playing them all again at some point. See you later, folks. Have a good day.